so we don't need to help you with that. And I will just ask the president of this club to just say a couple of words of welcome, and that's Alex Spencer Hill. So Alex, wherever you are, face to be on the recording, please can you put your camera on by pressing stop video, but otherwise we hope that you will be happy to be on the recording. Okay, so tonight we've put together an evaluation spectacular. Because evaluation is really important in Toastmasters. It's not just about learning how to give speeches, but it's about learning what was good about speeches and how could they be improved. It's no use if somebody just says to you, oh, your speech was really great. Yeah, fantastic. But what was great? And actually, how could I improve it? Gavin, can you turn off that doorbell sound? Thank you. So that's what we do in Toastmasters. We have short evaluations after speeches, and we give people some actual value to take away on their speeches. And normally evaluations after speeches are 2 to 3 minutes long, but we're going to do things a bit differently tonight. We're going to have an educational workshop from a past champion, and then after the break we're going to have 3 speeches, and after each speech we're going to do a round robin evaluation, and that means that anybody will get a chance to give some evaluation to the speakers. Now, as you see, there are a lot of people in the room, so you might not all get a chance to speak. So what we'll do after each speech is ask you all to just write a few comments on a form, on a feedback form, but I'll come back to that after the break. So for now, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Ga Lok Chung, who was the 2016 D91 Evaluation Contest Champion. He's gone on to run evaluation workshops right across the district. He's a distinguished Toastmaster, a member of the City of London Toastmasters and KPMG Communicators. Please, let's give a warm welcome by doing this, jazz hands, to Ga Lok Chung.
Thank you very much, Antonia. Can I just get some thumbs up on the screen for people who can hear me and there are no issues? Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure. I met Antonia through something called the Odyssey Network, which allows people to network and mentor each other. And so Antonia was telling me about this exciting evening that she wanted to run. I, of course, wanted to get involved, and it is a real pleasure seeing so many people this evening. I'm actually based in London, but some of you, or most of you probably don't know this, I actually grew up on the South Coast. So for anyone here who lives around Fareham, or particularly the Salisbury Green area, that is where I grew up before I then went to university. So it will be a pleasure to, to see someone from those parts of the country. Today's workshop is going to be covering evaluations. I've delivered evaluations for probably about 5 to 6 years now. I've been a Toastmaster for almost 10 years. In my first 4 years, though, I was quite a naughty person. I kept on renewing my membership, but as a typical Londoner, I never actually really turned up. And it wasn't until I really found a nice club that I really enjoyed talking to people, that I really saw the value, particularly not just in delivering speeches, but all of the educational elements around Toastmasters, that I became much more enthusiastic coming to every meeting. And I think there was a point where I was a member of 4 different clubs, which certainly took up quite a lot of my evenings. The purpose of this session is around sharing tips and advice for delivering effective evaluations. So during this session, I really want to cover 3 things. The first is, why are evaluations important and how you can help prepare for giving an evaluation? The second one is, how do you become an effective listener, which is really important to kind of listen well and give pertinent feedback. And the third one is actually standing on stage or in front of your webcam to actually communicate an evaluation effectively for the audience. I hope that makes it clear. So why I think feedback is important is that it's a fantastic way of influencing people to do things differently or to change their approach. I've personally found that evaluations aren't just useful within Toastmasters. They've been really effective in my workplace, where I need to give feedback to both people who report to me, to my customers, my suppliers, and even the people that I work for. Because Toastmasters gives you a technique where evaluations or feedback is constructive, it's action orientated, it's really valuable to people, that's really helped me in my own career. I work for KPMG. One of my members actually told me a really lovely story, which was when she was going for her promotion interview, she was interviewed by several partners, and they actually turned the question around on her saying, in terms of personal development, can you give us some feedback on how we ran this interview? That's a bit of a combination of table topics, which is impromptu speaking for those who are guests this evening, and actually giving some feedback. And you know what? She absolutely nailed it. The feedback during her interview was, it's the most comprehensive feedback that they've ever heard from someone. And the reason why it was so good was because every 2 weeks, she was giving evaluations. She was listening to evaluations, and she was constantly improving and going to workshops. And through that, that's really helped her in her career. Now, I'm not saying in your interviews, you're going to kind of be put on the spot like that, but I just wanted to kind of give an example where it's really powerful. So having strong evaluation skills really helps you to influence people. The second thing is it really helps show your appreciation as well. I think there's a tendency, particularly in our careers, when the only times we're asked to give feedback is where either something has gone wrong, okay, so it's a complaint or people are unhappy, or it's the year-end reviews and people are never really quite sure what to tell or to give feedback on for people to kind of say, have they done well or not done well. Evaluations and feedback should always be positive in a sense, in that it shows that you've been paying attention to that person, okay? And it means that you can appreciate the things that they have done and where they can further improve. And I think that's a really important mindset that you need to have when you're giving evaluations. It's not just about whether someone can improve in particular areas or it's negative. It's really about showing your appreciation and listening. And again, that can be applicable to many areas of your life. It can also be used to improve the quality of people's work or their outcomes. In Toastmasters, the phrase that we have is, it's where leaders are made. And in order to demonstrate strong leadership, an important part of that is to help people improve, help them improve the quality of what they're doing, help keep on encouraging them. And so doing evaluations on a regular basis, really putting your hand up for it, that's a really important point. I also think it's great to develop relationships with people, which I know is a bit of a strange one. I'm not talking about romantic relationships. I'm just talking about in your network, connecting with people. Because, when you start giving evaluations, when you start talking to people, you're getting to know them a bit more. It really helps you to kind of build some rapport, to talk about what someone has talked about. That could really be useful when you're listening to someone in a conversation when they've maybe given a talk outside Toastmasters. Having a bit of a chat to them and sharing your observations, is a great way of really building relationships with people. And the final point I wanted to mention about evaluations is that it really helps set expectations as well. You can kind of help explain to people what you think is good, what you think is success. And that can be quite inspiring for people, because sometimes people can be uncertain in terms of where they want to go next. So the kind of 5 things on why feedback is important: it helps influence people, it helps show appreciation, it helps show recognition, it helps improve quality by being a leader, it helps you build relationships, and finally, it helps set expectations for people. And that's why, I'm personally really passionate about it. Something that I was keen to do is I've delivered maybe 20 evaluation workshops over the years, and everyone is always looking for something different. I think we've got about 40 people on the session. I want to make sure that you are getting what you want out of this. So just for a few moments, I want you to use the chat facility on Zoom, and I want you to type in just a few words. What do you want me to answer, or what do you want to get out of this workshop? And I'll make sure that I tackle all of those items. Okay, so if I maybe just give people a minute to do that, just in the chat window, just type in, so for example, I want to give more constructive feedback, or I struggle to find things to talk about in an evaluation, I would like more help on that. So just a minute, if you just want to type that in the chat, that would be really useful, and I'll make sure I hit all of them. Okay, seeing some really good stuff in there. Just another 30 seconds for people to type it in. Okay, just last 10 seconds for people to type up, and we've got, looks like I'm going to be having to cover a lot of things this evening. Some of these I might need to take away just so that we stay on time. Okay, I think we'll probably wrap it up there. And what I'll do is, I'm just skimming through this. What I'll do is I'll probably give this workshop for about the next 10 to 15 minutes, just going through some points, and I'll leave 5 minutes at the end just to make sure I've covered all of these questions. For anyone who doesn't answer them, I can do a private message to you during the, or I can do a message during the rest of the meeting just so that they get answered. Okay, so I'm going to screen share just a quick presentation. I'm not going to do death by PowerPoint. Can everyone see that? Just give me a quick thumbs up. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so this is a typical evaluation that I've seen in many clubs. I'm just going to call him Robbie the Robot. Apologies for anyone who's called Robbie on the meeting. Everyone starts off with, I really enjoyed your speech today. And I have to say that's a really good way of starting off an evaluation. A little bit generic, but it is a good, encouraging way. You said this, and they'll usually quote something that they heard during the speech. You said that, they'll really quote something said during the speech. But you could be louder, use more pausing, use more eye contact, use your body more, and have a stronger ending. These are the 5 most common things that I have heard in many evaluations that I've heard over the years. They are all good things if they are applicable. I would say, I don't know, the reason why I think people pick these particular items is because they're quite easy to talk about. They are very obvious in that it's something that you see, but doesn't necessarily relate to the message that the person is trying to deliver. Yep. And therefore, I feel like that if we sometimes just keep on going to these 5 particular items, it doesn't give as much value. So one of the things that I give as a challenge to everyone here is, we know these come up a lot. It's fine to use one of them, but please make sure you don't use all 5. I'll explain a bit more why in terms of how that is going to be a bit more valuable. So the other thing I want to talk about is, before you go into any evaluation, and I'm not sure if we'll have time to do that for the speakers today, is getting to know them. Okay, so step 1, before you actually go into the evaluation, is to say, you know, what is the speech objective? What is the person trying to accomplish as part of that speech? Is it meant to be entertaining? Is it meant to be inspiring? Is it meant to be a call to action or informative? Because the type of speech or what they're trying to achieve should really influence the evaluation that you're giving. Because if there's someone who is trying to deliver a serious speech, but it's peppered with lots and lots of jokes, okay, that could be appropriate, or it might not be. But trying to link your evaluation back to the speech objective, I think is really, really important. And maybe something that we could try if we've got later on today in terms of the round robin is maybe just asking the speakers to give a quick, 15-second, what are you trying to achieve today? And then people can help be informed on when they're giving their feedback. Ask them, what are they trying to get their audience to do, think, or feel? Who's it aimed at? I know that in Toastmasters, we are an incredibly diverse group, but sometimes people are preparing their speeches, or they're trying to, like, for example, we've got quite a lot of people who are preparing best man speeches at Toastmasters, or it might be a work-related speech. So having that context of who is it aimed at, again, can really help frame and inform your own evaluation. And the last thing that's really worth kind of asking them is, what sort of technique is the speaker trying to use? So we've got lots of techniques in Toastmasters. We have storytelling. Usually it's the hero's journey. So somebody has some life, something's gone wrong. They have to undergo some sort of change to correct it. They try several times, they succeed, and hurrah, it's all sorted. I'm sure I've heard many of those types of styles of speeches in Toastmasters. It could be very factual, so someone giving a very argumentative speech. It could be maybe, and in some of the kind of pathways speeches, there's sometimes conversational style or almost play acting type speeches, which, because the styles are very different, I think you should really reflect that in your feedback and your evaluation. So the things which I think people should really bear in mind is, if you've got time, try and just spend a couple of minutes maybe beforehand with the speaker to say, what are you trying to do? What do you want your audience to do? Who's it aimed at, and what style they're going for? That's something we probably used to do a lot of when we had face-to-face meetings. I appreciate now that we're online, that's going to be more challenging. But perhaps when the agenda is issued and you know who the speaker is that you're evaluating, I'd maybe recommend you just to drop a quick message to them saying, hi there, I'm going to be your evaluator for this meeting. I just want to ask you a couple of questions. Would you mind sharing that with me? And that helps me tailor your evaluation. Doing it that way just makes it a very, very effective evaluation. Okay, I hope that makes sense for everybody. Please use the chat if you're not sure, and I will tackle it at the end. Okay, that's my screen sharing not working. I'd also encourage you to maximize the use of Basecamp and Pathways, usually on Easy Speak. So for those who are guests, that's the tool that we use to schedule speeches. You can generally see the pathway that person on and the type of speech that they're doing. All of the evaluation criteria for all of the speeches and pathways are available online. So I would encourage you just to Google it, download the PDF if that speaker doesn't have the evaluation criteria, and just take a quick look at it. Because if you do that, that gives you so many insights into what that person is achieving. And that really helps you give an effective evaluation. I appreciate that this pre-work stuff, it's kind of very focused about looking at what the person is doing and which pathway speech they're doing. But I do feel like that the way that the education program is structured, sometimes you feel like evaluations can feel like it can be on any kind of particular type of speech. But I think if you do it more targeted to what the person's achieving, I do think it's more powerful and more relevant to that particular person, which is why I really encourage it. Okay, so I want to talk about listening and notes. So I saw there were a lot of questions about sometimes it's difficult to find what you coming up with ideas to talk about in terms of an evaluation, particularly for advanced speakers or very experienced speakers. And particularly also if you're new to evaluations, sometimes people are a little bit low on confidence in terms of what they look for. And so they find it's useful to maybe have some sort of checklist. So I've shared this in the meeting chat as well, but I'm just going to kind of give you almost, it's a bit of a cheat sheet that you can kind of go through if you are struggling to identify things to talk about in a speech. So One thing, which is the most easy, is called the COD analysis, which is a content, organization, and delivery in terms of an acronym. So what people tend to do is they take a blank sheet of paper, they divide it into 3 columns with the headings content, organization, delivery. You can kind of see the definitions on the slide here. I won't repeat them. And every time, for example, they saw an example that supports the point in the content one, they would write that in that column in their sheet. Every time they saw something that is an example of, say, an opening under organization, they would write something like that. Having that kind of structure, people sometimes find that's an easier way to help them listen and make observations quickly so that they can then refer to their notes when they're giving their evaluations. The other bit is a slightly different acronym, GLOVE, covering very similar points, but at a next level of detail. So it's, you know, gestures and how grounded that person is, the type of language they're using, how's the speech organized, their voice, so that's the clarity, vocal variety, and that kind of enthusiasm and energy that they put in. All of these information is in the handout, so don't feel like you need to take screenshots or notes or anything like that. I've already provided that for you. And some people want an absolute checklist that they want to go through. So I've also provided for you a table. And what I've done is, before Pathways, we used to have something called the Competent Communicator Manual. Those of you who have been members for more than probably 3 years would probably have heard about that. And this list is stuff that I've taken out the Competent Communicator Manual of. These are the things that you should work on in order to develop a great speech. And so what you can do is, you can kind of take a look at this list, and every time, for example, you've seen someone do a really nice, concise closing, you can maybe make a note of that. And that's kind of a nice way for you to really capture your notes in a structured way. I think sometimes I've seen people sort of scribble pages and pages and pages and pages, and sometimes it's quite difficult to find the note that they were referring to. And I hope that me sharing these is going to be useful for you to kind of help look at it. I have to say that the more evaluations that you do, the less that you need to rely on these notes, because intuitively, you know, you can kind of see similar things in terms of speeches. But for those of you who are maybe starting out or get a bit stuck, I hope that these can help you. Okay, so I'm just going to stop my screen sharing. Okay, so I've talked about the first parts, which is, you know, why evaluations are important and how to prepare for them. I've talked almost a bit of a cheat sheet or list for you to kind of work through if you're struggling to identify things that you're looking for in a speaker. The third part is, how do you actually then deliver the evaluation in front of an audience that's in person or in front of a webcam? Okay, so the general guidance is that you kind of need to do 3 things each time you're giving a commendation, which is a, you know, praise, something that you observed in the speech that went really effectively, or recommendation when you see something that, you know, can be improved or done better. And the 3 parts that you need to have when you're giving each of those points is, what specifically did you see? Yep. How did that impact the speech? And why was that important? Okay. So if I take an example, yep, I use some PowerPoint slides to share my point. So you can say, Ga Lok shared his slides that summarize his point on a PowerPoint slide. So that's the what did you see? The how was, that was effective because it meant that what he was saying was aligned to what was on the slide. And the third thing is why that was important was because it meant that that message can be, need to remember the message more clearly. Okay, so there's 3 parts of what specifically did you see? How did that make an impact to the speech? And why did you think that was important? And that's the same for recommendations as well. And I'll be honest, once you become an experienced evaluator, you can pretty much take anything that someone has said and turn it into a commendation or recommendation. So if I was to turn that around, you could say, Ga Lok shared his slides during the Zoom meeting. Yep. The impact was I could no longer really see Ga Lok's facial expression because that was quite smaller and all I could see the slides. And that was that kind of reduced the impact of what he was saying. He perhaps could have kept it on there and shared the slides afterwards. Like I said, same point, you can turn it either way. But the fact that you're making a clear evidence observation, that you're clearly showing how that impacts the speech, and then you're kind of in a way suggesting what I could either continue or do differently, that is a very effective way of delivering either a commendation or recommendation. To deliver. And if you were to try and say that for everything that you wrote down, that's going to be incredibly difficult. Okay, so what I recommend, and the kind of, I guess, guidance that a lot of our workshop evaluators state, is that try and aim for about 5 points, which is 3 commendations, 2 recommendations. People often talk about the sandwich technique. So in terms of structuring your evaluation, you might do a kind of a 30-second intro, 30 seconds to cover a commendation, then a 30-second recommendation, then a 30-second commendation, then a recommendation, then the strongest commendation with a short summary at the end. So 5 points, and each of those points covering that structure of what you saw, how it impacted it, and almost the why it was important. Okay. I can see that I'm running a bit out of time now. I'm always quite poor when it comes to talking a lot. I hope that was useful for people in terms of covering the importance. I hope that the handout that I gave you can help give you some inspiration on what to look out for. I hope that the structure I gave can perhaps help you almost frame the way that you're giving your feedback. So it's both constructive and action orientated, which is really what we're looking for in evaluations. I'm just going to take a look at the questions if I missed anything. I will try and maybe answer them during the chat, but maybe if I just take 2 minutes, are there any particular urgent questions that people have? You can probably just pop them on the chat. Yep, can I share the PowerPoint? Yep, I'm happy to share the PowerPoint with people on here. I'll do a PDF version and then just post it on the chat for you. I'll just hang on. Thanks, Antonia. Well, I'll be attending the rest of the evening. Feel free to message me privately if you still have some questions. Thanks very much for having me on. Hopefully I'll be able to do this workshop perhaps in person and meet you in person when we're out of lockdown and I can come back to Southampton and be that local boy again. I'll hand you now back to your Toastmaster.
Okay, thank you very much, Ga Lok, everybody. Thank you. That was really enlightening and useful. I hope you all made some notes. You've got Ga Lok's handout in the chat, and he will make his PowerPoint available afterwards, which we can send on to you if we've got your email address, which we should have, because you need to give us your email address in order to register for the meeting. So what we're going to do now is just have a very quick 5-minute break, quick comfort break, grab some water if you need it, pop to the loo, literally 5 minutes, folks. So please come back at 12 minutes past, and then we will carry on with the speeches and the round robin evaluation.
Can I speak to the Zoom master, please, and to the timekeeper? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, okay. On time, let me just put my video on so you know you're not talking to a ghost. At the moment, I'm finding it very difficult because the cameras are off on my second page with the timekeepers. It's very distracting. I like to see some reaction, and it's pretty dead on that on the second page. So if the timekeeper maybe can hashtag timekeeper for us and bounce onto the first page, it might just give me a little bit more to work from. Black pages are quite something to work from, not seeing anything or anybody. Also, you haven't got me as co-host, so I can't pin the timer.
Oh, you should be able to pin. I thought you pinned the timer. Okay, I'll make you a co-host.
Just chat with Effie.
I've just renamed Effie. I've added the hashtag.
Lucinda, if you've got the latest version of Zoom, you should be able to move the videos around.
Yeah.
To put
How do I do that?
People's videos, literally just move them around. So
Hmm.
Yeah.
the actual
How do I
video is
do
on
that?
page 1.
Let me look. No, still on 2. I can't move Effie at all, and I'm actually clicking, moving. Whoop.
I've just made you a co-host, Lucinda.
Okay. Try. Can't move Effie at all. Effie, if I can just chat to you, can you please do 15 minutes for me? Green.
Okay, so green is this. You'll
15,
see.
and just hold it up for me for a good 30 seconds at least, please. Yeah?
Okay. So what
Thank
I'm doing is I'm going to hold it up for a minute at least. That's what
That's
I
it.
do for Ga Lok.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Then can you take the amber for me at 17? The orange, amber, or yellow? That's it. 7. It's a bit, it looks a little red now. Can you bring it back a little bit towards yourself, away from the camera? Yeah,
Okay.
that's better. Yeah,
Okay.
not with your face, just a little over your face.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. There we go. Excellent. That's just perfect distance. Now it looks amber. And then red at 18 for me. So it's 15, 17, 18. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just wish I could move you and I can't.
Can you not pin the timer?
Yeah, but then I'm only going to see the time. I'm not going to see anybody else here. That is the problem. It's the best I can do.
2 minutes, everyone.
Lucinda, in terms of amber, would this work for you better?
Yeah, that's yellow, amber, yeah. It's easier.
Yeah.
The orange,
Okay.
orange and red for all the speakers, even that starts going a little orange now. So the yellow's greater on Zoom,
Okay.
much better. Thank you.
No worries.
If your chat box is open right now, I'll be asking you to write it down because I like to see what you think about the word freedom by the end of this speech today. Ladies and gentlemen, many people have fought, have died at the hands of seeking freedom. They've walked to freedom. They fought for freedom. How many people coming out of lockdown now are looking for the first airplane, the first ship, the first car drive into the countryside to get away from their homes and their unhappy lives? People are seeking freedom, a way out, a pursuit. My question to you today is, freedom really an outward pursuit, or is it an inward journey? 20 years ago, my life was really a little messy. Nobody could understand what was wrong at that particular time. And it was suggested that I go for intensive therapy. I kind of thought, what's the point of that? Me? Therapy? Nah, I don't need therapy. Who needs therapy? What I didn't expect was after a couple of weeks, all the suppressed emotions and memories of my sexual abuse dating back to 2 years old was about to explode on me. I sat raw, vulnerable, scared, and totally alone. The only way I could cope was to imprison myself in my own man-made prison because I could not endure the hostile world that I felt was now my reality. I clawed inside of myself and I hid, terrified to ever show myself to the world. At the time, I was going to a counselor and waiting in her rooms the one day, there was a psychology book that intrigued me. I picked the book up and I turned to that first page. And there was a quote by the well-known philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. I'm going to repeat that. Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. Now, there was something about this quote that I couldn't understand. I asked the counselor, is there any merit in this quote? And she said, Lucinda, one day you will work it out. Let me tell you that one day took close to 20 years. I think you can call me a slow learner now. At the same time, I'd started classes, Qigong classes. That is ancient Chinese form of exercise. My master, who actually was based in the UK, spoke to me and said to me, I think as part of your healing, we should maybe look at you coming to assist me with classes in a men's maximum sentence prison. I kind of was excited and I was kind of a little scared. But I said yes. Anything in the name of finding peace and finding healing within my own being. As I got to the gates that day, I could feel this anxiety rising within me. And I walked through the security point and I knew that life was never going to be the same ever again. That strong odor, that smell of testosterone, of sweat and adrenaline, it seeped through my body. The catcall started as we went down the passage. You slut! Come to daddy! Daddy's gonna show you a good time! And so I carried on through into the bowels of this prison, feeling more and more suffocated, more terrified with every step. But I knew that something from this was going to change my life forever. We were led through into gymnasium. And there in front of us was a group of men, muscle-bound, angry, frustrated. Why did they have to come to this class? Why did they have to do this? And my master saying to me, Lucinda, just stay with me. Follow all my guidance. It's going to be okay. And as the class progressed, I watched these men soften. I watched a calm come over them. Things changed. We did classes only every week. And the problem was that it was all great and well doing it in this room, but it was the rest of the time that they'd endure in the prison. They were then sent to their cells at the mercy of their fellow offenders and the wardens. And what they said to me was, but Lucinda, what can you do for us beyond the one session in the week? I went back and thought about this. And what happened is I developed a 3-step process for them of acknowledge, assess, and accept. These 3 steps I will explain to you later on in the story. Life moved on past this. My master died from a brain tumor, and things happened from there. I got very involved in sport at a professional level. Life got busy, life got chaotic, and everything was a distraction and a denial for me. As long as I was busy, I didn't have to think and I didn't have to feel. I was okay. But 7 years after this prison time, I was 39 years old, and I reached to get my ball on the golf course out of that hole, and I never could get up again. My spine collapsed. I was absolutely terrified at that time. And what happened is I was then bedridden, and then I had the time of confinement. 6 weeks of surgery, sent back to my apartment all alone, and I had nowhere to go, nowhere to run to, and the outer world was no longer accessible to me. I came face to face with myself yet again. If only what I taught the offenders I'd applied earlier on, I would have been in a way better place. But you see, ladies and gentlemen, we often teach what we most need to learn. And instead of me learning from this experience of confinement in this apartment, which drove me insane, I became angry, I became aggressive, I became frustrated. I became a victim of circumstance. Woe is me, look what the world's done to me. How unfair can life be? Why me? I didn't take the opportunity to go within and grow. I turned to alcohol, prescriptive medication, and I could not in any way face the reality of what had happened to me. Years pass, and yet again, life travels through. New things come into your life, new distractions, new things to busy yourself with. We're amazing like that as human beings. We find things at all times to distract us from the most important thing, which is ourselves. And then in March this year, what hit all of you, everybody globally? Lockdown. Nobody escaped this one. And I remember where I was. Do you remember where you were when the announcement came that lockdown was starting, and you probably had 2 days to go? You best get your provisions, and you will, that is it. You were in lockdown. I remember where I was. I was away on the road. My company said, you've got 2 days to come home, Lucinda. And I thought, no, I can't do this. That road trip was torture for me. And it took me 11 hours to drive home. I didn't want to go to the shops. I was in denial. I didn't want to face the reality of what was going to happen. Alone, confined. You couldn't go out. In South Africa, we had military. You'd be locked up if you went out of your home. This was a grilling time. But I made a decision. While the outer world shut down on me, my inner world woke up for the very first time. I came face to face with myself in such a real way that I decided this was the opportunity, instead of seeing it as a crisis like everybody else, without blaming the government, without blaming Chinese, whoever, whatever, animal, whatever the reasons were that were going around, I decided to cut everything out and to realize I had a gift in front of me. The gift of learning the 3-step process that I taught the offenders 20 years ago. And I went back. Acknowledge. Step 1. It's no use being in denial. You need to face yourself and look in that mirror. Understand where you're at. No numbing the pain as I did when I had my back surgery, numbing my physical and emotional pain with drugs, with alcohol, as the prisoners did in their own way too. Violence, rape, other ways of distracting themselves and buying cigarettes, whatever they could. They also came back to a point of saying, I am in this prison and there's a reason I'm here. I'm acknowledging that I'm doing time for something I've done. I've got to take responsibility, and I've got to understand my part to play in it. And this is all part of acknowledgement. The second step, assess. The negatives and the positives. Break it down. There is always something good in the worst situation you can imagine. There's always a way out. There's always freedom to be found inside. And it doesn't matter how rough your circumstances are. You can be in a toxic relationship. You can be in a difficult job. You can be in the most conflict kind of friendship circles. You can live in a country that you feel is not where you want to be. But when you start to assess it for what it is, you will realize that in everything in this world, not everything is just bad. As with lockdown, there was a great gift waiting for you, an invitation. The third step, accept. There's no use fighting. There's no use screaming. There's no use cursing, blaming, shaming those that have hurt you in your past, the current government, whatever it might be. For the offenders, it was the wardens and their fellow offenders with them. You have to learn to accept that where you are at is where you are at. This is your reality for now. And then you take that invitation to change. This is the offer you get. Because sometimes when you do the change within yourselves, you take away the sting and negativity of those bad things that have happened or you perceive to have happened. And you can find within freedom. Something I made in the first 3 weeks of lockdown. You are as free as you choose to be. You truly are as free as you choose to be. You can be angry, bitter, resentful for many things in your life that have happened to you. As for the offenders, something I learned at that time that I bring to today is only hurt people hurt people. And what my master taught me as I bring into this part now is I learned to look at the offenders with soft eyes. I learned to have compassion in my heart without judgment. And I learned to see the light in them too. Because when you see somebody's light, when you see they're good, even when they can't, even when they're hostile, there's something that happens within them. Your belief in them gives them the opportunity to see that within themselves. And so during lockdown, I really sat with what I'd done in my entire life, running for freedom every day. I was a freedom monkey. I just wanted freedom at any cost. I left relationships, I left jobs, I left everything. I was running all the time for the next fix, retail therapy, whatever I could do. And I would say, hey, I want to be free. But in truth, I wasn't free. Because freedom is not an external pursuit. It truly is an inner journey. It's coming home to yourself. And I started understanding the words of Jean-Paul Sartre. It rang true. Freedom is truly what you do with what's been done to you. I took the power away from those that had abused me, hurt me, whatever they'd done in their lives, to me. And I said, but it's not about them. It's about me. How do I process and how do I assimilate? And how will I see what they've done to me? Do I want that noose around my neck? Stay angry, aggressive, keep running for the rest of my life? Having to go on excessive trips to try and get away from my reality? The truth is, I always had to come back to myself and that empty void yet again. You see, that pursuit of running after freedom is pretty much like chasing mirages in a desert, and you never, ever quench your thirst. This is what I realized in this entire time of lockdown. The gift of actually what I'd found 20 years ago. It took a rather long time to come full circle back to this point. And what I realized in that book that day, those words, the power of those words really fitted. And I have great gratitude, as I hope you will get in your life, is to realize that this lockdown has actually been a gift, if you will see it as such. If you'll take it from an empowered stance, you will realize that you can, in any given time, you can be in a prison and you can be confined. You don't need to be locked up in a jail, because we do it better than any offender will ever have to face. Our jails are way worse when we can't cope with the world, or we feel hurt and we hide away from the world with our masks, our walls, and behind these cells. And it requires you and me to actually open up that door and allow those exact layers and those masks to fall and reveal the beauty of who we are for the world to see us. The offenders found that. Individually, they all found this. And that to me was an incredible, inspiring moment of my life, in the last days that I had in that prison. They had a life sentence. We didn't with lockdown. We thought we did. They had 25 years. But these men found the answer that so many of us are probably seeking today. It doesn't feel so good, does it? When your freedom is snapped from you. But in the truth of all of it, it comes down to you. Because you are as free as you allow yourself to be. And that quote will be with me forever. Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. Toastmaster.
Wow, thank you very much, Lucinda. What an incredible speech. Obviously spoken with true heart and from your life experience. That's what I love about TEDx speeches. There's so much there. First of all, are we using the same feedback link, Gavin? Oh, there you are. There's a feedback link for Lucinda. If everybody would like to take that, pop it into a browser and take a minute to jot some thoughts down, and then we'll come back and we'll start the round robin evaluation. Can we have a minute on the clock, please, timer?
Okay, the time is up. So 1 minute is up.
Okay. So who would like to start with the evaluation of Lucinda? Who has something to share?
I'll start.
Hey, Francis.
Francis. Yeah, hi. I thought that was a phenomenal speech. Particularly like the way you gave, how vulnerable you were, and a lot of it resonated with me actually in terms of things that have happened to me in the past. Love the use of the quote, and what you do with what's been done to you is fantastic. I liked the way you use both internal and external references to confinement, and just learnt a lot. Superb speech. Completely had me in the palm of your hand. Superb.
Absolutely. Thank you, Francis. Does anybody else have something to say? Steve Brookfield, I'm sure you have something to add.
Yeah, typical, you pick on me. Okay, so I thought Lucinda was passionate, emotional. She told a story. It was powerful. She gave experiences that few of us, I guess, have experienced, and that lends itself to the subject of freedom. Freedom means a lot of things to a lot of people, and for me it's fighting injustice, and I would like to have seen Lucinda do a little more to expand her narrative to why freedom is not just her own experience, but how her experience touches on many other people's experiences. I think that would make a TED Talk work. Otherwise, it becomes a little narrow in terms of the message that Lucinda was trying to say. But I feel like Francis did, that it was a powerful, well-delivered speech, and touched me. So that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Judith, you volunteered.
Yes, one thing I like to say is that it's certainly a subject that touches a lot of women, and I have known many women who had various situations like that in their life. They struggled, they tried to figure out how to be free of these experiences, and certainly Lucinda's speech has established that, and I really liked it. The only thing that I had my issue with is that this is an emotional topic. So I wanted to feel something much more than I did. So when you deliver a painful personal experience, you want an audience to feel these emotions, because these are very strong, raw, difficult emotions of many women who face that. And I did not feel that. And that's one thing I think is important in this particular type of speech, is to grab us and let us feel that raw emotion and all that you wanted to, that you felt and to want to convey.
Thank you,
Thank
Judith.
you.
Perhaps pausing more would bring that emotion over more, give us a chance to walk in Lucinda's shoes for a moment. to try and picture more where she was and the experiences she's been through. Who else would like to say something? What about, oh, Gavin?
Yeah, can I just say, I like Francis, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The things I really loved about it were, I summed it up as powerful, passionate, persuasive, and personal. It ticked all those boxes for me. I loved the examples, the little stories you used about the prison and your personal life and so on. I could identify with the emotions behind those. I liked the way that you used quotes, but you repeated those quotes, particularly the most powerful ones. It's like so often I hear a quote, and what was that quote? And I've missed it. But you repeated it a number of times, or a couple of the quotes, which gave me time to write them down and for them to land. So I really loved that. And I loved your vocal variety. A lot of speakers use a very narrow vocal range of volume and tone and so on. But you really used a big, powerful vocal range, and you weren't afraid to really belt it out when you were in that prison and those prisoners were screaming at you. We could get a sense of that and how intimidating that would be. But you could also be really quiet and gentle when you were talking about some of the emotions and how that came back to you in lockdown. So I really love that. My recommendations are three things. Two related to the technicalities of the using it on Zoom, is that I thought you were a little bit too close to the camera and we didn't see, you know, your gestures were going off screen as mine are now. And if you'd been a little bit further back from the camera, you could have used bigger gestures. And so that would be something to play with. I thought either you need to maybe try experimenting without a virtual background, or use a green screen to try and eliminate that fuzziness around the edge, particularly when you moved your hands up. We were getting all sorts of white fringing, which was just a distraction from the power of your message. And if you're going to use that background with the TI logo, try a higher resolution version, because it was very, at least on my screen, it looked very blurry. But the final thing I wanted to say was, I loved that, you know, at the end, I almost felt you were kind of repeating yourself a little bit at the end to get to the time. And I think you could have used those last minute or two to pull it back from you and then push it out to challenge the audience. What can you do as an audience? What should we be doing with this lesson that you learned? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're on red. Does somebody have a 1 minute contribution? Yeah. Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. On Zoom, you don't get the benefit of really being able to gauge the audience feedback, and I'm going to focus on that. I echo everything that everyone has said before, so I'm not going to take up time repeating what other people have said. What I really wanted you to know, Lucinda, is our dog is not well, and my wife has been out this evening and she's been pacing the house while I've been up here. When you started speaking, I was engaged, and the dog walked in the room and just sat down next to me as calm as anything all the way through your speech. And I just wanted you to know that that engagement the dog picked up on as well. So I just, such raw emotion and touched me personally as well. Thank you very much for sharing so candidly.
Thank you. There you are, you're a dog whisperer as well. Thank you for that. Okay, lovely. So you've got the form if you want to give some more direct feedback to Lucinda, but it's time now to move on to our second speaker. I think this is going to be something completely different. We have Beatrice Freeman. Beatrice couldn't do impromptu speaking at all. All speaking had to be scripted, memorized, and rehearsed first. She heard that Toastmasters is a unique place where you learn by doing, with support and without pressure. And that's why she joined. And this speech completes her chosen pathway. That means she's got to level 5 of a pathway, which for her is visionary communication. Formerly an opera singer, an interpreter, and a cybersecurity marketer. Beatrice is the author of Introverts Make Better Networkers. She holds business networking workshops at Tech UK that help overcome anxiety and build lasting business connections regardless of your personality type or disorder. Beatrice is a member of WARF Speakers in London, and the title of her speech tonight is Including the Neurodiverse, My Experience. If Effie could pull down the red screen. Thank you. And Beatrice has 22 minutes for this. So 18, 20 and 22 minutes for her screens. Thank you. Let's welcome Beatrice Freeman.
Thank you very much. Am I audible? Yes. Could I please see who the timer is so I would be aware of the time?
That's me. Hello.
Lovely. Thanks so much. It was a quiet afternoon. I didn't have so much to do, and I thought I'll have a look what people are doing on LinkedIn. I was scrolling down and I saw my friend Emma, a physicist and a founder of the Innovation Festival. I was very intrigued what she's got to say, and she had a request. She was asking if we out there could employ the incredibly talented people who are on the autistic spectrum, who can't find work. Would there be companies who could accommodate her request? And the project was called Neurodiversity Project. I thought, not really, this is not going to happen. People are very reluctant employing us on the autistic spectrum. See what happened then. And then I saw Emma's post saying, "Thank you so much for doing this. I now have got 20 people employed." And I thought, have things changed? Has the time come? Are we not just talking about diversity and inclusion, but actually doing it? And if that is the case, should I come out? I'm Beatrice Freeman, and I am at the end of my pathway. It's visionary communication, and I am doing my level 5. I met Antonia and thought, should I actually talk about something that's important to me in my last project? Because the last project needed to be done. It is preparing for professional speaking. I need to do a keynote. Would I have enough courage to actually talk about something that's important to me? And here I am talking to you for the first time, admitting to the world something that I have been hiding all my life. The fact that I am on the autistic spectrum. The title of my speech is Including the Neurodiverse, My Experience. There are many neurodiverse disorders. You would know dyslexia, you would know dyspraxia. When it comes to autism, I think we are a little bit afraid of that. It is slightly different than the other disorders because it is a whole spectrum. And the definition of it is that there isn't really a definition of it. So how many people are affected by this disorder in the UK? Could I have a show of hands? Is it A, 5%, B, 1%, C, 8%? Who is for 5%? Can I see B, 1%? And see, 8%. Aha. It's actually 1%, which is not that much, but the whole thing about the autistic spectrum disorder is that there are people on it who are very much affected and people who are not that much affected, and those who are not that much affected are not that visible, and when they're being counted, they're not really in that 1%. Things are getting complicated with this autism disorder. I can see it in your faces. What is she going to say next? Aha. I am going to try to give you a good definition what it actually is. The important thing to know is that autism is not a mental illness. It's not a mental illness. It's a developmental disorder. Something went not quite as expected on the way when we were getting formed. Something in the nervous system didn't quite go as it goes with the so-called neurotypical. May I call you neurotypical? Or are there some autistic spectrum disorder people hiding in the group? For the sake of the argument, I'm going to call you neurotypical. Apologies for the others. What it is, the autistic spectrum disorder is something that is difficult to define, not just because there are people who are less affected and more affected, but also, according to the latest American research, because some of us actually make an effort to cover it up. And people who are covering up are not really in that 1%. This is getting more and more complicated, isn't it? The two things about the autism spectrum disorder are that we are more intelligent than the average, but we are much less able to express our feelings, to label our feelings, to identify emotions, and to interact with the society, in social interaction. So there we go, higher than average intellectual abilities and much lower than average abilities to interact, to communicate, to express feelings, and to respond to other feelings. Now, how did I find out that I actually probably am more intelligent than average? Well, it was at school. I wasn't bullied. I was not bullied. I was different, yet I wasn't bullied because I was useful rather than beating me up for being different, which I was getting at home quite a lot. At school, I was being appreciated. People copied my homework, people listened to me whisper the answers. And this is how I discovered that actually what my mother says, Beatrice, for such an intelligent girl, that actually means that I am more intelligent than the average. That's fantastic. But then I find out that I actually was much less than average on the scale of communicating my emotions and on engaging with people, and that I found out one peaceful evening when my husband, the love of my life, said, Beatrice, you love your work much more than you love me. You're an ice queen. I have found someone else and I'm leaving you goodbye. I thought it was a joke. My husband of 13 years had a great sense of humor. I learned all the humor that I know from him. I thought, he's saying this, tomorrow we're going to see the other side of the joke. And tomorrow he started moving out. It broke my heart. And where I turned to books. I did exactly what I did in childhood when I was beating up at home for being different. I turned to books. I read 34 books. on all kinds of relationships, men, and expressing feelings. When I was a kid, I had this excellent idea how to bypass all the terrible things that were going on at home. I figured out that I can join libraries, as many libraries as I wanted. One library gave you 2 books a week. So I could have 4 books and 6 books. And all I did, I read books. I read books, and at moment of crisis, I turned to books, which doesn't help because I'm just getting more and more skilled and intelligent. This is not good. It's not being really accepted by the society, or it is being feared. Would a person like me be dangerous? She probably is more intelligent than me, so it's good not to have her around. And the problem I've been having all my life is that I am not really welcome. Whatever I do, how many other people I help, or how many times I entertain someone, I am really not ever welcome. And I think that is the biggest problem that people on the autistic spectrum have. That we either feared or we ridiculed, but we never really welcome. And to be included is the biggest dream. To be welcome, to feel like I belong somewhere. So of course I just turned into a big achiever and started doing things. And when my husband said that I don't express my feelings and I'm never as happy at home as I am at work, that's because at that point my work was opera. I was on stage, I felt safe on stage. I was expressing exactly the emotions that I was being told to express. Everything was rehearsed, prepared, and scripted. The audience sat far away. I was safe on stage. The orchestra were playing, and that was the frame within I was performing. And I was happy. And it was so lovely. But my husband saw that, and he interpreted it as she loved her work more than she loves me, because she never expresses her feelings towards me. She doesn't express any other feelings than that opera thing. Obviously doesn't love me. And it took me 4 years to actually be able to talk about it. This is a big problem for people on the autistic spectrum. We do have feelings. We do have emotions. It is that just that we don't necessarily know what to do with this, and we don't have much experience of expressing it. When I was a kid, there was too much of me all the time, so I learned to make myself smaller and smaller, and not to speak and not to move, and I became a clumsy kid who had a stutter and read books. But when you know what to do on the autistic spectrum, you become very good at it. So if you want to employ anyone on the autistic spectrum, there isn't really much risk, because first you get someone who is very loyal. The characteristics of this disorder are that we work in a very strict frame, but we do work very well. And to us, the world doesn't make much sense because of the way we grew up. Things didn't make sense at all. So in work, when we finally have got some sense here, we do it even better than other people. And if you employ someone like us, we're going to be very focused and very happy that we get recognized, and we're going to stick to that work. It's a very loyal employee if you have someone like us on your books. What are the other good things about us? We like patterns, and we like joining dots, and we're very good at it. So if you have got someone like that on your team, we're going to show you different angles. You have different angles of solving a problem. You suddenly will see a pattern and it will help you connect the dots. It's very good to have us. You have to be careful though, because the downsides of this kind of disorder are not just that we're going to tell you what we think about it because we are so intelligent that we can see the next thing coming. And that's so annoying and that's so arrogant. But we mean well, because we think that if we tell you that, we are very, very useful. We disclose something that you couldn't see coming. Aha, it's a good thing. But then, because of this intelligence and the inability to socially interact, we're going to make a lot of enemies. That is going to come. The third characteristic of this disorder is hypersensitivity. People on the autistic spectrum are extremely sensitive to light, to noise, to any movement that is not expected, a surprise. Never ever surprise a person on the autistic spectrum. A surprise is the most terrible thing to happen. We lose the frame, we don't know what is happening, and then the meltdown happens, and when the meltdown happens, people get incredibly scared. Remember The Rain Man, the film? The meltdown looks horrible. Remember My Name is Han, a fantastic Hollywood film, very recent? The meltdown is terrible. There are triggers. There are often colors, there are often sounds, there are memories from childhood. How to cope with that? How do I cope with that? I pretty much know what it is and I know what is coming. Yet, a month ago, someone surprised me. Someone surprised me in a good way. Up till then, I thought he was a penniless student trying to date me. I found out that actually he was the CEO of a global organization. And what did I do? I went in a meltdown. I sat and cried and cried and cried and repeated, I can't believe this. I rocked and cried like a 5-year-old. I couldn't believe I was doing that. But it shows you that you don't really get cured. However you try to cover it up or indeed learn by mimicking what other people do and how they react, when it comes, it comes. So to any employer, if you are employing an autistic person, you need to be prepared that one day they will get triggered. And what to do in that case? Do nothing. Just do nothing. It will pass. It will pass. The good things, I think they outweigh the bad things. And quite many of us have put so much work into overcoming this disorder that it pretty much looks normal, but we spend so much effort and so much time on looking normal that when we don't have to do it, we prefer to be on our own. And when you see someone like me, probably call him or her a geek or a nerd, someone who would never go to a party, noise, movement, unexpected things, surprises, lights, that's so hard to negotiate. And I would sit at home not because I like sitting at home, but because all these things, they just bombarding me with intensity, and because of the hypersensitivity, it is so difficult. It is so difficult to counteract that, and you get so exhausted at work when you are behaving like the neurotypical people are behaving, that in your spare time, it's not that you like being on your own, it's just you're eliminating the stimuli that are coming at you all the time. I think there isn't really a very bad thing about the autistic people. I think what we really want is to be welcome and to feel like we belong. I have worked in several professions. I have won awards. I have written a book. I've entertained a lot of people in main operatic roles, but the biggest thing for me to have is not acknowledgement, and it's not a lot of money. It's to be welcome, to feel that people want to be with me. And it has never changed. So I think if you wanted to do something for the neurodiverse, make us welcome. It really is the biggest thing. And if you're going to fake it, we're going to know, because we are supremely intelligent and very sensitive. But if you don't fake it, you'll get a friend for life, really. So let us all enjoy the sense of belonging. There isn't really a bigger joy in the world than being together, belonging, and enjoying being humans together. Yes, we are different on the autistic spectrum, but we really want to be the same. So that is my experience, and thank you for listening. It was really hard to say.
Thank you so much, Beatrice. What an incredible insight. I should actually say that my 22-year-old daughter is on the spectrum. She has Asperger's and she also has dyspraxia. And to top it all, she is transgender. So with the three combined, I have a lot of experience of what you're saying. She's incredibly intelligent, incredibly. I don't know where she gets that from, but anyway. So thank you so much for braving your heart and your soul. That was wonderful. If we could please take a minute to give some feedback on the feedback form. Gavin has put the link in the chat. And then we'll come back and give some round robin evaluation, Beatrice.
Okay, the minute is over.
Thank you, Afi. Right, who would like to start with the round robin evaluation of Beatrice? Anybody got their hand up? I might not be able to see you if you're on page 2. So just shout out if you do. Steve again. Go on, Steve. You'll have to unmute yourself first.
Oh, yes.
Does help.
It does.
help.
Okay. Can you repeat that?
Sorry, I think Steve was going to speak first, Dave. Steve Brookfield, and then we'll hear from you, Dave.
Okay, wonderful.
Right.
Okay, so Beatrice, I think you're an absolute superstar. It was a polished, well-constructed and well-delivered speech. It was personal, it was to the point, and it raised questions of the audience. So that's a really important point for a speaker. you are challenging the audience to actually think about the issue, and it resonates with people. We may not be autistic, we may not be diverse in that respect, but we all exhibit parts of what you said. I personally felt very moved by what you said, and I thought it was a superb speech. I thought your consistency in front of camera really worked well. The fact you were central all the time, there was emotion in your eyes and your movements, I thought was consistent, and I thought the delivery was exceptional. Personally, I really, really enjoyed it. It was a moving personal story with lots of messages that are resonant with the modern age and the challenges we all face in our lives. Bless you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Antonia.
Thank you, Steve. Right, over to you, Dave.
Yes, thank you very much, Antonia, and thank you, Beatrice, for an excellent speech. Lots of compelling content there, really good delivery, good use of phrases. You were very articulate. I thought your use of vocal variety was really excellent as well. I do think that there were some points where there was some room for improvement with your gestures. You might have been just a little too close to the camera, but I couldn't see your hands 100% of the time. Sometimes it was very clear, other times a little less so. So that's one thing I think I would suggest to accentuate your language. That can be a little bit challenging in a Zoom environment, I know, but we're all gradually getting better at it together. I know for a long time I've sort of just been a talking head, but now I try to get back when I deliver my presentations. And for the most part, you did that pretty splendidly. Thank you for sharing that really, really fantastic message overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Right, over to Paul O'Mahony.
Thank you, Antonia. How many of us would like to come out? How many of us would like to be welcome, to feel welcome this evening? They were the first thoughts that went through my mind as Beatrice elaborated her speech. And what struck me first of all about the speech was how relevant it was to me, and I thought to everyone in the room. Because when a speaker says that they're going to come out, an audience will relate to that, because every person in the audience has something that they haven't yet revealed. So I thought that was a terrifically powerful aspect of the speech. Continuously throughout the speech, I noticed that Beatrice emphasized in several different ways the advantages that people who are on the spectrum can give to employers. Very focused and repetitive piece of content. She was aiming to achieve a purpose, and for us, when a speaker has a clear sense of purpose, in addition to revealing themselves, that's where real strength comes from in a speech, because it's that purpose which is most relevant to the audience, even though their own story is most relevant to themselves. I have one recommendation, and it concerns the main point that Beatrix made in the speech, which is She wanted everyone in the room to know that the biggest wish of all of a person who's on the spectrum is to be made welcome. And I thought that there might be an opportunity the next time she makes that speech to make that point throughout the speech more frequently, since it was such a key purpose in the speech. Welcome people on the spectrum in employment, welcome people on the spectrum into your sitting room, welcome people on the spectrum by just keeping them company in an authentic way. Well, I suppose in summary, what I would say is that to speak, to come out is terribly powerful because it's so relevant. To speak purposefully to an audience in a way that you're aiming to influence an audience matters. Put the two of those together. So that's the first thing. And secondly, never forget your main call to action. That's the key thing. That's what you want to leave them with. I don't think I'll ever forget the education I got this evening. Thank you very much, Beatrix.
Thank you, Paul. That's a wonderful evaluation there. We have time for one more who'd like to share for about a minute. Possibly somebody who hasn't spoken yet. I'm looking at Gita, Soledad,
Yes,
Verona. Soledad would like to say something. Fantastic. Soledad in Peru.
Thank you, Antonia. I was moved by this speech. Most of us are not in touch with these experiences. So it was good for us to learn from someone who looked so sweet and so calm, tell us strong facts about this autistic spectrum disorder. I like the speech, but I would like to make some recommendations. Not lose time at the beginning. Is so important. He was asking for the timer, so he lost the connection that we expect to get between speaker and the audience. And at the end, not to say thank you. Okay, just end your speech with calling to action, as somebody said. Yes, very strong ending is what we expect, and it's going to be more effective. And also the voice at the beginning was too low, and only that. Those are my recommendations, but it was a very good speech, very important content, and the fluency, everything was acceptable, good, and I congratulate the speakers for this delivery.
Thank you very much, Soledad. Well, we've had two incredible speeches so far, quite long speeches and full of emotion and authenticity. And now we're going to do something very different. For a start, it's going to be a shorter speech, and I'm sure it's going to be an incredible speech as well. But we're going to hear now from a young lady who only started her speech journey quite recently. Well, actually, that's not true. She did her competent communicator, I think, a few years ago. But then she came back to Toastmasters recently, and she's been taking her speech journey very seriously, really structuring her speeches and taking time over every phrase. Anybody who knows Dagmara will know this to be true. She has become a member of Lima Toastmasters in Peru, which is a wonderful club, and I see she's brought several of her fans with her tonight. In fact, I noticed that James Plunkett has recently joined us, so you're very welcome, James. So with no further ado, I give you a speech from Level 1 of Presentation Mastery from the Evaluation and Feedback speech from Dagmara Elminowska, The Problems of Being Tall. You're very welcome, the lady in red, Dagmara.
As a child, I had a few career ideas ahead of me. I could have become a fashion model, a news reporter, a basketball player, or a chef assistant. What do all those professions have in common? They are perfect for tall people. Fellow Toastmasters and most welcomed guests. It's not easy to be a woman. Believe me, it's even harder to be a tall woman. Whether you like it or not, you stand out in the crowd. Being 5 feet 11 inches tall, it feels pretty intimidating to stretch out and reach for the stars. As a tall celebrity woman, it seems much easier to look like a gorgeous woman because you have money and you have support. Your trousers don't look like shorts and your blouses don't look like t-shirts. Being tall is a challenge, but I have to rise to the occasion. Do you know what was my teenage dream? The biggest dream I had was wearing shoes in any other color than black. I dreaded going to the shoe shops. As soon as I mentioned my shoe size 9, a male size, I was directed towards the male section. And guess how many shoes I really like there that I could have bought for myself? 0. Being tall and dressed like a man, you could have made a mistake, unless you made me in the daylight. I had some connections with France and its fashion house in my school days, and it could have been nice, if not for the fact that I was called the Eiffel Tower by boys insecure about their own height. So how can you meet a guy when you are so tall? That's the question. Clubbing usually seems like a good option, but when you are tall, it's a completely different story. The only connection you could have made with guys is by them being glued to your chest, because you can forget about eye-to-eye connection. Going to the cinema means you have to sit at the very back of the room as not to be hit with popcorn all the time. It's hard to fit into society, but as it wasn't enough, it's hard for me to fit into my own bed. It's too short. My legs stick out. Not as much as for anyone to trip over, but nevertheless, it's hard to keep warm at night and fall asleep. And when you finally do, and you wake up in the morning, you better get up with care, as not to hit the ceiling, ouch, again. Evaluators or anyone who wants to help me with my speech, please bear in mind that due to my height, I have to deliver my speech while sitting, because I want you to see my face and not my torso. And besides, you don't want me to hit the ceiling again, do you? Fellow Toastmasters, being tall has its pitfalls, like any challenge in life. But I can rise to the occasion and hit the heights by walking on cloud 9. Even if I fall or feel insecure, cloud 9 will provide me with a safe landing. Toastmasters.
Thank you so much, Dagmara. Lovely speech. All right, if we could have the feedback link, there we are. We'll take a minute to gather our thoughts. Give some feedback to Dagmara.
Okay, the minute is over.
Okay, Effie, thank you very much. So who would like to kick off with their comments for Dagmara? Perhaps somebody we haven't heard from already? How about Richard Honeyman? You got something to say, Richard? Rather picking on you there, aren't I? You don't have to if you don't want to. Oh, we can't hear you if you are speaking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Right, thank you, Toastmasters. Welcome, guests, and thank you, Antonia. Yes, I think I mean, a recommendation I was thinking of, maybe the speaker could have actually stood up, and it would have actually come across how tall you really were, and maybe the issues there would have been even more poignant. And I think that you could have got the speech over a little bit better as a main recommendation at the end. But overall, the sort of, you know, the pacing generally, the pausing, the use of the screen, what you're trying to get over, I thought it actually went very well as a sort of level 1 sort of speech. I mean, it's actually, in a way, the concept was very simple. So, but maybe that's the idea. You haven't got to make speeches complicated, especially early on. So, with that, back to you.
All right, thank you. Indeed, you don't have to make speeches complicated. What about Craig Curtis?
Thank you very much, Antonio. Yes, Dagmara. I actually watched your speech the other night on YouTube. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. And yes, too, I wanted you to stand up because I don't know how tall you are, but I have been with you on a couple of trips, as you know, going to different meetings, and I really enjoyed your vocal variety, which we always say a lot in Toastmasters. People have issues with their vocal variety. Definitely very good. And I also like the part when you spoke about being tall is a challenge. I like that emotion that came up, because I thought you were about ready to cry at that moment, but that was excellent. And also the vocal variety where you used about the Eiffel Tower. Excellent job. I definitely enjoyed your speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. What about Vanda?
Well, I laughed the whole way through. Especially that I'm on the other end of the measuring tape. I'm very, very tiny, but I can still feel your pain. Seriously, just with the tone of your voice, with the way you spoke, your pain has come through in a very, very funny and hilarious way. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would just echo what the others said. It would have been great if you stood up just once, even if you just pretended to hit your head or something like that. I think that would have given your speech an even sharper edge at the end. But otherwise, yeah, and if you maybe, perhaps if you just stood back a little bit more or turned your camera down a little bit, they could have seen slightly more of you than just your head and your shoulders, which then would have brought your gestures across a little bit better. But apart from that, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you very much. I think it's a great way to finish today. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanda. What about Gita?
Yeah, I thought it was a brilliant speech. It was really enlightening. I'm only 5'3", so yeah, I think everyone else is tall, but I thought she did really amazingly, and I loved the play on words throughout, and I loved the passion, and yeah, I wouldn't have known all the problems that tall people face. I thought it was a brilliant speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Gita. How about Effie?
I thought it was really humorous, very funny speech, and the way you spoke about the Eiffel Tower just got me really. And what I would say is, in terms of your tone, it was very varied, so it sort of caught my attention. I honestly didn't have anything negative to say, in my evaluation, to be honest. It was blank because it was a very interesting speech.
All right, thank you, Effie. Effie, we don't say anything negative, we make recommendations. So we make contributions to how we think it could be improved. Very rare that anybody says anything negative as such. Thank you very much, Effie. Effie's a very new member of Toastmasters, so learning fast, I'm sure. Thank you for that. Now, who was I going to pick on next? Let me see, I saw somebody. I was going to ask Jim Plunkett. Now, I'm sure you've heard this speech before, Jim, but what would you like to say to Dagmara tonight?
Can you hear me, Antonia?
You can, yes.
Okay, this is kind of an experience for me because I usually work with my computer, but this is the first time I've had to use my smartphone, so I wasn't quite sure. No, listen, this is the second time I've heard this lady, this tall lady. She thinks she's so tall, I mean, I'm 1.90 meters and I wear a 13 shoe, and she thinks she's so big, but no, but she's very tall and she's very lovely, and she's a relatively new member to our club. And the only thing I'd like to recommend to Dagmara, it was recommended by the first evaluator, is perhaps if she can look for an opportunity to stand up, because she's talking about how tall she is, and yet she's sitting down. So I think that would be an asset to her, to be able to stand up in front of us and even have a reference nearby her so people can actually see how tall she is. I think the pace might have been a little faster, but otherwise her gestures were excellent. Her diction was good, and I really enjoyed her speech very much. And congratulations, Dagmara.
Okay, thanks, Jim. We have Alex up next. Alex, don't add that you'd like her to stand up, because we know that.
I wasn't going to, no, I think that's been said enough. Yeah. I don't need to say that. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that speech, Dagmar, and certainly you know, my mum's 5'11", so she probably knows how you feel like. But she ended up marrying my dad, who was 6'7", which is really tall. And I used to think of him as a giant as a child. So, but I'm in the middle, which is good. Anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed the energy of your speech. I like the expressions that you did, the gestures as well. Is there anything else that I can think of? No, I thought it was just a really good speech as the first, first speech.
Okay,
So,
All
yeah,
right, Alex,
well
thank
done.
you. So there's a lot of people here who've got their cameras off, so I don't know if they're there or not. So I'm not going to ask any of them unless they quickly come on. Oh, we've already heard from Antonietta. I'm going to ask David Eastley to finish up, please.
All I can say is that I'm very grateful for the opportunity to find out what's going on the Solent with Toastmasters, having been away from the Portsmouth area for the last 40 years.
Okay, David, thank you. You'll have to come and visit my club as well. All right, well, I think that we've said all we can about evaluations for tonight. I think we've had an excellent evening. I'd like to thank Ga Lok Chung for giving us the workshop. Where is he? Are we still there? I can see his photo. I'd like to thank our 3 speakers. Thank you, Ga Lok. Everybody wave. Thank you, Ga Lok. Thank you to Lucinda Harman for her incredible speech. Thank you. Thank you to Beatrice for probably enlightening many people to a world they may not even realize is there, or to the depth of it. And to Dagmara, Lady in Red, for bringing us your perspective on the world. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to just pop in the chat details of a meeting that we're holding at Shilling Speakers tomorrow. It's another educational evening, and you probably don't want to know anything else educational, but just in case you do, I'm going to pop the details in the chat. You're all welcome to come over to Shilling tomorrow. Thank you all, and I'm going to pass back to our president, Alex Spencer-Hill.
Great, thank you very much. Well, that was amazing. Yeah, there was certainly, yeah, the educational was great. I've certainly learnt some stuff there, which I'll be practicing. Ga Lok, and who else do we have? We had Dagmara to end it. We had Lucinda Harman, and we had Beatrice as well. And certainly all of the speeches resonated with me in different ways, which I think is the powerful thing about Toastmasters, is that you get different speeches. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. And certainly, you know, my cousin's daughter is autistic, and I know she, you know, struggles at times. So I think, you know, I might even share that speech just as an inspiration that actually, you know, you can achieve stuff, and certainly people should be welcome with autism and any other any other thing. You should all be welcome, and you're welcome anytime, by the way. Visit our club. And that goes to anyone else. If you would like to visit us again, our meetings on, when is our meeting? It's a good question. My mind has gone blank at the moment.
First and third Tuesdays of the month.
First and third Tuesdays, yes. We can send you a date if you want. We've got your email, so I'm sure we can send you any details of that. I just want to say a big thank you, obviously, to all of our speakers for staying and actually taking the time and giving us a variety of different speeches. And most of all, I'd like to thank Antonia for actually organising all of these speakers from afar and contacting everyone so that they could come from the USA. So a big round of applause to Antonia, or jazz hands, whatever you want to do. And yeah, sorry it's a bit over, but I think it was certainly worth listening to all these evaluations and feedback and speeches. So I shall now, oh, actually, I will just say, I don't know if this is a, can anyone join the area contest to watch, Gavin? Yeah. We have on the 12th of October, that is right, we have the Spinnaker are hosting our area contest. So if you want to come along and see the area contest in action, then you're very welcome to do that too, and we can send you details. I will now close the meeting. If anyone else wants to stay for a chat, you are very welcome. I know it's late for some of you. I just thank you for actually coming from all afar, USA, and I've got no idea of time differences. I'm sure Antonia has a bit more because she's done a lot of visiting. And yeah, but I hope you've learned a lot and enjoyed the evening as much as I have. And I shall now close the meeting with a clap because I've still got no gavel. You see, I've not found a replacement other than a clap with a gavel. So I'll just close the meeting with a clap instead. So.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah, you too,